I'm doing the next presentation, which actually is really nicely motivated by what Bill Pan did with his introduction to diversification and intensification. So this is a project that, once again, is leveraging some of the work being done with REACCH as well as with another USDA-funded project. And it deals basically with the bioenergy opportunities and biofuel policy impacts options, once again, in the same Pacific Northwest region. I'm delivering it. It's basically the work of Penny Diebel at OSU and many, many others, both in this project and on the, at Oregon State. So the contributions of this project basically to bioenergy research, NIFA, in addition to having the project that we're on, also has a challenge area on sustainable bioenergy. Lots of crossovers going on there. That one focuses on bioenergy, bio-based products, et cetera. The REACCH connections to that project is basically the biofuels could be part of this new set of alternatives, as Bill indicated in his first presentation of this section. There could be some dedicated energy crops, of which the oilseed crops are one of them, and that's what we're engaged with. Basically in FY12, that focused on production and delivery of the sustainable biomass feedstocks, and now in this year, NIFA USDA wants to continue to explore basically the sustainability of these types of systems with a focus on water availability and water quality. Some of the main economic questions that come into play, I think the one that's most relevant for this discussion is the last bullet there. You know, how will crop acreage, agricultural markets, trade, and environmental outcomes change as we switch from what was a corn-based ethanol production levels to something that's more of the second generation type of biofuel production, and that all has connections to the REACCH efforts. Developing a sustainable, this is a project that we've been working on, and basically the first is to explore it for the Pacific Northwest, and basically it's the Farm to Fly initiative where they want to be using biofuels for jet diesel. The aviation industry is motivated to use, in this case, camelina, to provide a feedstock for the jet fuel. And so we want to integrate then a viable, what will it take to integrate this viable bioenergy crop, camelina, into a dryland cereal production system of the region. And so what we want to do in this is basically to evaluate that particular initiative, which is the Farm to Fly initiative, and perhaps other policy options to evaluate the commercialization opportunities, and then once again to assess the trade-offs, economic and environmental, as part of this system. So what are we doing? We're basically collecting regional information on an integrated system that includes not just the production, but also the processing and transportation. I won't really talk about those at this point. We're also trying to develop this policy framework to say what would the incentives have to be in order for this to be a sustainable option in the dryland grain productions. We want to quantify the costs and the benefits, as economists always like to do, and then we want to evaluate how these policies either complement or compete with the objectives and outcomes of other policies that we have. Just a quick flow chart here of what this project is about, and then I'll get to a couple particular outcomes that we've looked at. Once again, it is a combination of both field, farm, and regional scale analysis. We need very much the data at the field and the farm scale to feed into the trade-off analysis model, which you heard about earlier during session 1. We also have linked this up with an attributional life cycle analysis from an engineer at OSU. And then we're linking all those together to get the regional impacts into a regional computable general equilibrium model that Jeff Reimer is working on, and that's going to be paired up with what we refer to as a consequential life cycle analysis, which is basically a regional parallel to the normal life cycle analysis, and then come up with these regional scale impacts. Okay, so the outcomes and the deliverables to date, how much progress have we made on this? Once again, we've been focusing on trying to look at what would be the potential supply of camelina in this area. What would the price have to be? How much can we get? What will the impacts be on other production systems? And so some of the initial work here has been done by Luke Stein, a master's student at Oregon State University. And to do this, because we don't really have a viable camelina production system in place, we can't go out there and just sample. So we have to be looking at field level information, field trials, and projecting forward as to what would be the opportunity cost or the supply of these kinds of things. So we don't have enough information to put into something like the ag tools yet, although we're trying to think of integrating this into ag tools. And so we're relying on enterprise budgets, the type that Kate does, and she'll be talking about those later in this session, to be looking at what is going to be the potential cost associated with these kinds of production systems, building them as much as we can to have spatial variability into them by state, by rainfall area. Okay, and then we're going to estimate the potential supply curve for camelina by looking at the opportunity cost, similar to what John did before. What we find is that these supply curves can then be used to kind of first order approximation of can we meet that farm to fly initiative. And I'll just go to, well, let me back up just one more first. We've estimated these supply curves, which just says as the price of camelina increases in a hypothetical way, how many million pounds of camelina would we get in this region? And so we've developed these supply curves. They have a kind of ratchet effect because we're adjusting for rainfall and for states and other types of spatial variables. And then when we estimated the acres of camelina that we would think might be forthcoming, here we had to make some assumptions about adaptation rates, and we used things similar to what's been done at U of I and looked at adaptation rates of 10 or 15%. And so with that estimate, we get something like this supply curve. So summary, the results suggest that given the current market conditions, according to this analysis, the supply of camelina in the Northwest is not enough to meet the biofuel goals set by the Farm to Fly. Without an increase in yields and government promotion or changing land markets, we would need to have 75% adaptation rates and a price increase to about 0.8 cents per pound. Enda. Okay. Great.